When I left Lebanon, I couldn't take my house with me. I couldn't take my books. I couldn't take my paintings, my drawings, the photos of my family, my sofa, my bed, my pillows. I couldn't take all of that.
You can only take so much in a suitcase. Books, paintings, photographs, maybe a Joni Mitchell CD or two. When Tania Saleh left Beirut in 2022, she packed lightly and started over. Now based in Paris, the Lebanese singer and visual artist has translated that rupture into a new album called Fragile. It is sparse, introspective, and stripped of the social critique she's long been known for. Welcome to Tarab, a new podcast from the National in Abu Dhabi that explores the Middle East dynamic and evolving music scene through interviews with some of the region's most compelling artists. I'm your host, Saeed Saeed, and in this episode, I speak to Tania Saleh about exile, silence, and what it means to live and create from a suitcase. Tania Saleh, thank you for joining us here in Tarab. And we're chatting to you at a very interesting moment of your career. A new album just came out. It's called Fragile. I had to listen to it over the last 2 days. There's a lot going on here, typical of your style. It's very evocative. The song creeps up on you. You need to hear it the second, third, fourth time to kind of get some of the meanings. And I feel that it catches you at a very interesting time of your career in terms of where you are at emotionally, physically even, and your relationship with Lebanon. And what does that mean? Can you still tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, you're right about it catches me at a very fragile moment of my life because I feel like I'm a bit out of place, if I may say. Although I really love this country, I love Paris, and I think it's a very good place to be for an artist. But I always feel like there's something missing in my life. There's the warmth of the people and the warmth of the weather, and certain details in my life in Lebanon I miss a lot. And ever since I'm here, I'm trying to collect all those feelings to more practical things like songs or paintings or drawings or anything that can be like a recording of that thing that I'm living. So ever since I arrived, I tried to put myself into a mode of creation because I want to spend the time thinking about creating rather than thinking that I'm not in Lebanon anymore. And the moment that I don't have anything to do, the emotional backup that creeps up and makes me and eats me from the inside. So I try to run away to creativity so that I don't have to think about anything else, so that I don't have to look at the news, so that I don't have to know the reality of what's going on. And I tell myself, hell is going to still be there, even if I try to beautify it. But at least I try to do my job to balance a bit of beauty into that hell. Maybe I can help someone think of something else. This is what I'm trying to do, actually. Half in denial, half in dream mode. I try to continue.
We are talking to you from Paris. This is now where you have relocated. How long have you been in Paris? And was there any particular moment or incident or even a feeling that made you say, yeah, it's time to leave Lebanon and relocate and see the next chapter of what my life holds?
Many friends who have been living here for a long time have always told me, you should come to Paris, you should live in Paris, you should work in Paris. And I used to say, no, I'm good. But then the moment that my kids, both of them, left Lebanon to study abroad, one was in Manchester and the eldest was in Paris, actually, I thought, okay, now if I stay in Lebanon by myself, I'm going to be rotting slowly but surely. Emotionally, at least. I couldn't have been able to live away from my boys. So I put all my effort and all my energy into joining them in Europe somewhere. I didn't know that I would end up in Paris. I tried to apply for this special visa that in Paris they have this special visa that they call it, which means that if you have a talent in something and you prove to them that you can work from Paris and not have to burden them with your misery. So they accepted. And I arrived here in 2022, right after, like I told you, a series of unfortunate events that you must know by now, like the economical collapse that happened in Lebanon, the explosion of the ports, add to that all the misery that followed the revolution in 2019, COVID, and the situation of not having electricity and a good internet to work, at least to work on my work, because I need to be online, because I have to connect with a lot of people outside Lebanon almost all the time, because I work also as a graphic designer, art director, and creative director. So there's always a connection with the outside world. I can't just write songs. This is not what I live from.
It's interesting, right? Because as you're saying, like it's always been challenging over the last few decades in Lebanon, but this last particular period in Lebanon, over the last 5 years, from COVID, the economical decline, as well as the tragic Beirut port explosion, it's been a very extreme period in Lebanon. And I was chatting to different artists who were creating music that was informed by that time. So, for example, as part of the Tarab podcast, we interviewed Adonis, and Adonis released the album Widyan. Widyan was written during that pretty intense time, and what they came out of it was songs that talk about almost like where the character or where the lyrics of these songs had the protagonists kind of retreating into themselves, like almost saying, I am taking a break from what's happening in the world. I'm going to retreat within myself in order to process and understand what's going on. I take this example or this argument and bring it to you in terms of what you're trying to do with Fragile. Because Fragile, to me, again, this is just based on the 3 or 4 listens, there is a strong sense of restraint, of a withdrawal within. You're asking yourself questions about what it means to be where I am, what matters in life. How did you approach the songwriting? Because this is probably a record that was done outside of Lebanon, which, and a lot of your songs are informed directly by what's happening in the ground in Lebanon. Did you kind of sense that this is where the songs were going, or was that a natural byproduct of where you are?
It was absolutely a natural product of where I was, and a natural product of the feeling that I had of living in a suitcase. Because when I left Lebanon, I couldn't take my house with me. I couldn't take my books. I couldn't take my paintings, my drawings, the photos of my family, my sofa, my bed, my pillows. I couldn't take all of that. I took maybe the collection of Joni Mitchell CDs. I took maybe a book or two, some photos of my boys, simple dresses, simple shoes, and I put them all in one suitcase and I just closed the door behind me and left.
That is traumatic in a sense that I don't think people realize, like, that type of action is not simple. It's not as practical as it seems. It is a lot of emotional strength and I guess a sense of trauma as well.
Yeah, it is. It was very hard, extremely hard to cut the umbilical cord with Lebanon. It took time. Like it took me maybe 2 years to process the idea that I was going to leave everything behind. And if a rocket blows my house away, then I would only decide that this is the most important thing to take. This defines me. This is very important. And this is where I'm going to take. And then after this episode, the COVID episode also taught me that, yes, we can live with a little. We can live with less. I mean, we can live with not many dresses, not many fancy things, not many things to buy. I reduced my life already since COVID. I reduced everything that I used into a toothbrush and a comb. So that was helpful, but at the same time painful, because like when I know now that during all this war in Lebanon, I was always thinking, if my house gets blown away, then all I have is what I have in my suitcase. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I took that as a concept for the album, both visual and lyrical and musical. And I applied as a painter in an atelier, and I started drawing paintings and working on a series of paintings of people living in their suitcases. Because it's not only me, like I look around me and I see almost everybody is living in a small apartment, like maybe one room apartment, cramming themselves between a bed and a closet and a desk. This kind of life is not only lived by me. I look around me and I see all those people. So I try to translate that into paintings in a visual storytelling kind of way.
When you say that, right, I'm thinking of songs from the album like Intamashi.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is roughly, I mean, we translate like you are nothing, would you say? And then Fragile, the title track from the album. It seems, particularly in Intamashi at the beginning, you're almost type of, it's like, are you kind of like confirming who you are, like this is who I am now, or are you blaming who you are, like I'm in this situation? It's such an interesting track because it took me a while to kind of understand, like, is Tania like blaming herself, like I am here, I'm nothing now, I have, because yeah, but then at the end of the song has a declaration, you are everything. So I kind of feel like, can you tell us a little bit about that song? Because I think that song is very important about your mind state of where you were when you moved into Paris.
Yeah. In Paris, you always, for transportation, you take either the metro or the bus, and you meet a lot of people, like eclectic people from all around the world. And when you sit down recently, nobody looks at you. Everybody's holding their phone and staring at their phones. So if some kind of horrible thing happens in the metro, they're not going to see it. Like they're going to miss that. So anyway, you don't see human contact anymore. That's a problem for me, because as opposed to Lebanon, having all the family around you and your friends and noises of love and partying and all of that, this was a cold environment. And seeing that your life is reduced into rail, going forward and coming back, going and coming and going and coming, and seeing all these people looking at their machines, because I call this phone a machine. It's, at the end of the day, it's a machine controlling them. And I felt like, yeah, we're all in a bigger machine controlling us all, whether it's the train or the bigger corporation or the whole world of, it's like 1984 kind of situation. It's becoming so true. So yeah, I wrote about it, and I felt that, okay, if I want this, I want to just to continue the note. If I wanted this song to end up on a negative note, which is probably the reality. Yes, I am nothing, and you are nothing, and we are all nothing, because at the end of the day, they count us by numbers, and we don't matter in the big picture. But at the same time, when I thought of my loved ones and the people who love me and whom I love, I thought, no, maybe this is where I become important. That's the only place where I am important. Otherwise, I'm nothing.
You spoke before about how your move to Paris necessitated a minimalism. It's a very minimal lifestyle. And I kind of feel perhaps in a way that also kind of seeped into the music, because the music is a little bit restrained. There's electronic textures. There's some Arabic melodic motifs there. It feels for me more of a minimal, more of a restrained sound that perhaps that we haven't heard from you before.
Yes, that has to do also with the idea of working with Øyvind Christiansen, who is the co-producer on the album, who's a Norwegian pianist and composer, whose style is also very minimal. And he helped me create these soundscapes that sound like there's a place in Norway, like I visited recently, it's an island. You don't see anything but the sky, and there's a small sculpture of Titania, who was a character from Shakespeare, and a very empty beach and dark. It was in the middle of, I think I went there in March. It was so dark, and there was this sculpture and the empty beach and the sky above me, and I felt that's so much what I'm feeling. This is exactly what I'm feeling now. I feel like I'm in a dark place, and I'm but at the same time, I'd like to throw in some humor here and there so that I can feel better, because I feel like love and humor are the two things that in this life keep me going.
Is there any songs from Fragile you think that kind of exemplifies that? that minimalism, but there's still those ray of hope, ray of sun, either melodically or lyrically?
I think all of the songs have a ray of sun except the last one. Because when I wrote the last one, it's called Nothing But the Sky. I was imagining this huge ecological collapse that will probably happen. I don't know if in my time, but it should happen because we're abusing this globe and we're abusing each other, and it's bound to happen. So I thought that if at that moment, people who think they're very important and very wealthy and very controlling this moment will make them think that they are really, whoever they are, they will know their worth when this happens. So this is the only song where I thought, okay, let's speak the truth now. Before we end this album, let's say it the way it is. But all the other songs, they have glimpses of hope here and there, like the song Swings. It's talking about how there are ups and downs in love stories, but she would like to stay up and like on a swing and stay up and never go down again. The song Matra, which talks about the territory, is like a conversation with the creatures in the world. Where she's asking a bird and a fish and a tree how they sense their belonging. And then she says, okay, there's always a possibility of having a territory for those creatures. But why don't I have a territory? This is a good thing to think of, but at the same time, I think that this conversation between those creatures, there was something positive about it, even though she thought that she was not like them. They are much more lucky than she is, but this conversation between her and those creatures gave her some good advice.
What I love about these examples is that it shows the storytelling. There's always been a storytelling element to your lyricism. And what I think was interesting about Fragile is that because of just how it's recorded and it's just in Paris, and it just feels like it's a very intimate album. And this is like almost in a way, this is a Tania Saleh album. This is just about you and what you're going through. And I say this because a lot of the times with your work, while each album that you do is personal to you, it is always that extra context of society, Lebanese society. Your music has always been kind of associated with critique of society, gender norms in the Arab world. So there's a lot of that associated with your music. While this one is just about you telling interesting stories, and it just seems very personal. Is that freeing for you? Is that in a way liberating for people to kind of hear your music and hear this album where you talk about these things without people linking it, okay, this is about Lebanon, this is about what's happening here, or this is a sly critique about a particular organization? Is that in a way a liberating thing?
Yes, it is. And there's one time I saw Björk a long time ago. She was interviewed. I don't remember who was interviewing, but she was saying, the minute that you start creating music because you want to please someone, this is where you become uninteresting. And as soon as you start creating only for yourself and only what you feel like you want to talk about or express, this is where you become more interesting. And I think that this is what I was thinking when I was creating this album. Okay, I don't want to please anyone. I don't want to go by trends. I don't want to sing in Egyptian because people want me to. I sing whatever I want. Even if I quoted a small bit of an Kulthum song, this is because I wanted to do it, not because anyone wanted me to. Or I will not sing in French or in English or in Khaliji or whatever language is now the trend. I want to sing what I feel like singing and talk about what I feel like talking about. So yes, this one was very liberating in that sense. Although I felt crammed in a suitcase in the sense that I couldn't move, at the same time, my mind was going places.
A lot of people interview artists, and you look at the popular music history, the idea of being exiled, is romanticized. You hear records of bands going to an island to record the album, and they talk about this sense of solitude inspired me. Yeah, but that's fine because you can go back home when you finish the recording. So, but at the same time though, I would just from this conversation, despite the difficulty of being away from home, of being, I guess, locked away from that part of your life, it has also unlocked, I guess, different type of creativity from you. Like this feeling of just being more free to say what I want and not worry about what's happening. It's like, in a way, does exile, despite its challenges, does have its creative positives, would you say?
Yeah, I agree completely, especially in my case, because I studied arts when I was younger in Paris. But then when I went back to Lebanon, I could not work in arts because this was not something that you could live from. So I went into advertising and all that episode in my life, which is also a very good school, but it was not art. So now when I came back to Paris, I said, now I'm going to do what I came here for in the beginning, in the first place. So I started to just paint. I had the choice to do other studies and like continue my studies in the digital world or find a way into the AI territory and all of that. On the contrary, I thought, no, I want to go back to the essence of creating ideas, of just painting, just expressing yourself as a human being without the help of a machine. So it is very liberating. And it's like a drug. Painting is like a drug. You're drugged without having to take anything. You go on a high. When you go into that space of creativity, the medium helps. And as you go, things happen because you want them to happen. So I wanted to go back to that essential feeling.
When it comes to your work, it's interesting because a lot of the time when people do research about yourself, or people who want to explore some of the region, the music from the region, your name comes up, and it's always the associated tags as one of the founders or one of the godmothers, early purveyors of the Lebanese indie music scene. So my question is a two-part question. It's like, A, do you feel that way? And B, if you do, are you happy with the progress of this scene, which you kind of helped in one way or another bring forth?
I don't like the word godmother or queen or all that stupid stuff. But I do think that a few bands and I, back in 1995, after the war had ended, we discovered that we wanted to create a new sound for that era. And we were all students, if you wish, quote unquote, of the Ziad Rahbani experience. Who taught us all to get out of the box. And each one of us went in a different way. Like some people took the road of rap and writing for rap or electronic music and experimentation. I started with folk and rock. Other bands were also doing classical, Arabic, etc. But we all created that sound of that era. And then each one of us took a different road. But yes, I think I'm happy with the progress because I didn't stay where I started. Like I didn't continue in the same style of the first album. On the contrary, I tried to discover myself again in every album and discover what I wanted to say in every album and try to talk about topics about Lebanon and the Arab world and humanity in general every time. Like I'm trying, but I think I like the progress. I like where I am now.
And I think that's really instructive what you said about Ziad Rahbani, influential composer from Lebanon, because in a way, do you view your, this is the thing, because in a way, the sound was new, but at the same time, it's still part of Lebanese music history because Ziad Rahbani is there. It is, in a sense, it's not a total break from the story of Lebanese music, isn't it?
You mean my experience?
Or just the idea, this whole idea of the Lebanese indie music scene and how it came. While it was a raw sound, a new sound, it has been, in a way, the attitude, the creative attitude was inspired by Ziad Rahbani, who set people to think outside the box. So in a way, that indie music scene, while it's new, it is still part of the greater story of Lebanese music.
This is my opinion. Like some people like to think that the indie scene started with us. I don't think so. I don't think so. The indie scene started with him because he was independent from his own family already. He was independent from the music scene in Lebanon and the Arab world, although his influences were from everywhere. So he was the first, not only him, also in that era, there was a band called Al Ard, and musicians like Isam Haj Ali and had started back then, and Roger Fakhr, all those guys with Ziad had started the indie scene. We are their students. We came later, but the gap during the war, there was a gap. Not much was happening in the musical scene. So when we came, there was too many of us to blow ourselves up with ideas and put them out there. But I don't think that we came from nothing. And also to add to that, the influences that we had, since each one of us was related to a kind of culture, like some of us were English educated, some French educated, some had traveled and came back. And so all the influence that came from the world to the Lebanese music was also very important. So we were not only influenced by what happened in the Lebanese scene and the Arabic scene, but we were also I was influenced by all the rock bands that I had heard, folk, jazz people, and the classicals, and every kind of music that I heard in my life was not only Arabic. So, and all of the other Lebanese bands also, like I can talk about my favorite Lebanese band, which is Suitcase. I think their influences were also very eclectic. So it was not only Arabic.
And I guess like my final question would be, because as you so eloquently stated, the Lebanese music scene on the lessons and the attitude of people like Ziad Rahbani. Do you see now with the Lebanese independent music scene now where it is taking some of the lessons that people like yourself, like Al Ard, like Soap Kills, Miriam Saleh, do you see your influence, no matter how subtle, whether it's in the music or in the attitude of the artist today in Lebanon?
I don't think I'm the one to answer that question. I think you should ask the young generation who their influences are. I don't think I can say I'm influencing this or that. But what I can say is that I'm missing Lebanese in the sense of, I'm missing the language. I see a lot of bands singing in different languages, but I'm missing the Lebanese. This is very important. Not the mainstream Lebanese, that I'm not missing. That there's a lot of that, but independence, people with new ideas, with new things to say, with independent minds, with independent attitudes, speaking in Lebanese, this is what I'm missing.
Tania Saleh, thank you so much for joining us in Tarab. Wonderful album, Fragile. Congratulations again. And we look forward to speaking to you and seeing you live somewhere soon, very near.
Thank you, Saeed. Thank you very much.
That's all for this episode of Tarab. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check in next week to hear from our next featured artist. Yasmin Al-Taji is our producer. Dua Farid is our editor. Arthur Edison is our audio engineer. And I've been your host, Saeed Saeed.